name is Nev Grove. I'm with One for All Marketing, and we're going to talk about pay-per-click search engine marketing, not to be confused with paperclip marketing, which is a gentleman had heard about this a number of years ago and said, so you can teach us about paperclip marketing? I think he thought it was like one of those programs like Who Stole My Cheese, that kind of a thing. It was some special technique. A little bit about me. So I spent 25 plus years in high tech, working for a bunch of industry leaders and others in various positions. I would like to say from in the trenches to senior director level positions. About 20 years ago, two other founders and I created One for All Marketing with the goal of helping companies do broad-based type marketing programs, companies that might not be able to afford a full-time marketeer, let alone a staff to cover, 3, 4, 5 different marketing disciplines. And as you may be able to tell as I'm going along, I really enjoy e-marketing, in particular the paid search stuff. So it is a professional passion of mine. Now, I guess this is for you, Javier.
Yeah.
If you have a hard time seeing the slides, feel free to move up.
All right.
The rest of you, I guess you can squint closer up to your screens. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? A very brief overview, contrasting pay-per-click and or rather than versus SEO, because the two can work very well hand in hand. Talk about the initial campaign and account setup, different kind of console and account settings, conversion tracking, what you want to do there, how to get it set up, creating your campaigns, creating keyword baskets, and then breaking those down into ad groups, and creating ads that'll get the right kind of people visiting your website. Then we'll talk about landing pages versus just taking people to your homepage and why that can really make a huge difference. I'm going to talk about some reporting and tracking for success. One of the things I like to highlight about this, this isn't everything you'll ever want to know about Google Ads, which is what the course is based upon. It will probably take me a week to go through all the nits and bits because there's a lot you can do with it. But the goal is in this 3-hour session to make sure that you've got enough to actually get yourself started without immediately tripping 3, 4, 5 of the big built-in Google budget landmines. Then we'll talk about some helpful resources, the keys to PPC success and the pitfalls, PPC versus other types of marketing programs. This is a little spreadsheet-based tool talking about how you can calculate, predict, and then use to measure your success with various types of programs. And then any remaining questions and answers. As was mentioned, feel free to ask questions throughout using, I guess, your chat, right? That's what you want to do?
Or they can unmute and speak up and just ask you at the time.
Okay. And we'll go through that. I'll cover as much as I can there. If it looks like we're going to be running over because of that, then I'll probably do a timeout and can either help you if we have time at the end of the session. Hello, welcome.
Hi, certainly.
Oh, no problem. I do have a 4 o'clock hard stop today, so sometimes I'll stick around, sometimes for a long period, answering questions. But in any case, if you do have questions about the course, anything you've heard or read in the materials, feel free to give me a call. There's a number on that opening slide, and one at the end as well, and I'll be happy to answer anything that you had come to mind from the class. Okay. So going back to the original, search engine type of marketing tools, we'll talk about SEO optimization. And you can think of SEO as the process of optimizing your website for the purpose of improving its what's called natural or organic listings, where Google and Bing and other engines will look at what you've got on a page and decide whether for any particular search, whether you should be up here or down here or somewhere in the hinterland of the 8th, 9th, or 10th pages. And with SEO, it's the search engine algorithms, which aren't shared by Google. It's just, you're the victim of whatever the algorithms happen to be at the time, not bid price to determine your relevance to the keyword in question, the search term that the searcher entered. Contrasting this with pay-per-click search engine marketing, paid search, basically this is where the whole process is built around where you create this basket of keywords that you think are relevant to your products and services, and then bid on those to be able to get a higher or lower ad ranking. And we'll show you in just a second what those look like. And basically it's, well, with one caveat, it's really driven based upon the bid price that you want for that particular keyword. Some keywords may be more important to you, in which case you'll bid higher, and other ones maybe not so much. And then we'll talk about how that's tempered plus or minus based upon a thing called quality score of the keyword. So this is what it looks like. And by the way, these pages change all the time, how Google and Bing display their paid ads. But in this case, the pieces in green, you'll always, for both these engines, you always see the at least the first set of paid ads on the top of the page. Then depending on the search, you may see some additional ones on the bottom. And then you may go 2 or 3 other pages into the search and you'll see additional ads pop up. Everything below this in red, those would be your natural or organic listings. Now, how do you compare these? Well, first of all, as I mentioned with SEO, and in fact with PPC, the views impressions of your ads, as well as the natural rank, those are all free. So with PPC, if somebody doesn't click on your ad, you don't pay anything. At that point in time, it's different. On the SEO side, it costs you nothing. On the PPC side, you can bid anywhere from 1 cent on up to a lot of dollars. But it's in your control, okay? I will tell you one thing, this 1 cent business, Google has some concept of minimum bid price. And these days, I think you'd be lucky to find a keyword where you could bid 1 cent on it and expect to show anywhere or at all. And particularly if you're in a competitive space, you know, you could be bidding a lot of dollars. And I'll talk about an example later on about why it's important to monitor that closely. So in terms of positions, this is on the SEO side, it's all based upon those algorithms that do change over time. With the keyword bids, as I mentioned, you control that, but then whether you're here in the stack or here, up or down, based upon the keyword quality score. And we'll talk about what that is more and how you can improve your quality score to be able to pay less to sit higher on the ad display. In terms of lead flow, visitors, it tends with the SEO side, unless you have a seasonal business, like maybe you sell Christmas products, something like that. Flowers can be driven by Mother's Day and other kind of events where you get spikes. But in general, it tends to be for any particular keyword, the traffic will be, you know, kind of a fixed state throughout the year. And depending on how many pages you have on your website and how many of those you could actually optimize, and given the fact that most folks will probably tell you to be able to optimize a page for SEO, you're talking no more than 3 or 4 keywords. If you try and do more than that, then nothing's optimized. Okay, Google doesn't like talking about it this way, but keyword density is kind of the key. So if you've got a page where you're taking your 2, 3, or 4 keywords and making sure that those are appropriately peppered throughout, you'll tend to do better. And you just can't do that on a website where maybe you've got a 10-page website, and by the time you take out the contact us page and a couple other kind of pages that you may have as mandatory, you can't necessarily optimize those. So it tends to be steady but little control. On the PPC side, you know, you can, as many quality keywords as you can come up with and as much as you want to bid to drive the traffic, you'll tend to be able to drive a lot more traffic with PPC, but then again, you're paying for it on a per click basis. Let's see. Let's talk about, let me jump down here first. So with the search audience on the SEO side, whatever number of, it's like hundreds of millions of searches a day, okay, people will look at. However, they've done some studies in the past, only about 1/4 to 1/3 of that extremely large number will actually take the time to look at an ad. These days, most users are savvy enough to realize, okay, these people over here up on the top and the side are trying to sell me something. The rest of this are just organic listings. However, with a higher percentage of the people, those this 1/4 to a third who do click on it tend to be, much later in the buying cycle. So instead of getting a bunch of the looky-loos who are just doing some preliminary research, perhaps, now you're getting people when they intentionally click on the ad. It's like, okay, I'm ready to buy now. I want to see what these guys are offering for how much. And then finally, I don't know if any of you use ever had or still use Flash-based websites or super graphics intensive websites. That doesn't work well for the SEO side because Google can't figure out what it should be optimizing for. It's based upon text characters and words. On the other hand, with PPC, you can take the visitor to any kind of page you like. We'll talk about the landing page, but that could be all graphics, I suppose, if you really wanted to do it like that. Okay. Now, in terms of what's better, I get quite well. What should you do first, PPC or SEO? And the answer is you can really start with either one. They work very well, very hand in hand. If you started with PPC, you get an idea of what keywords generate the most traffic, as well as those that have the best conversion rates. And looking at that data, then it might actually help you decide how you want to describe the different pages on the website using those type of keywords. If you start with the SEO side, you'll also have a pretty good idea as to what people are looking for. You can look at analytics, it'll give you an idea, which will help you develop your keyword seed list, which we'll talk about. So very, very hand in hand. Okay, this is gonna be an easy stick 'em up because I can only see two of you. So how many have a pay-per-click search engine campaign already in place or planned within the next couple of months? Okay. 50-50 here. I'm sure all of you on the other end of the link all had your hands up, right? So you're all like busily working on it now. SEO, any SEOers? You got any SEO planned or upcoming? Nothing on that here. Both? Well, I guess I can figure that out by the previous responses, at least in the classroom. So let's do a quick discussion of some of the terminology that's used in PPC. First, you'll see imps, impers, or equal impressions. These are potential views of your ads. It's like when you've done a search, you'll see all kinds of stuff pop up. Once that's popped up, that's an impression. Now, whether you actually took the time to read that ad or took any action on that ad, Google can't tell. So that's just an indication of how many people had a chance to see it. Now, when somebody clicks on your ad, then you know, okay, so this is a person who's seen the ad and is now clicking on it, and they're brought over to your website where they become a visitor. The click-through rate is pretty straightforward. The percentage of time to the searchers who saw the ad then clicked over to it. So if your ad was seen 100 times and 10 people clicked over, you'd have a 10% CTR. Cost per click, over whatever period of time you're looking at, if you, let's say over the course of a week, you'd spent $500 and you had, let's say 250 visitors, then your cost per click on average during that period would be $2.50. And this last piece here, this is one of these deals. In fact, you may hear me carp a little bit because Google over the course of time has developed and then taken away some nice capabilities, usually under the purposes of, oh, we're making things simplified or better for the advertiser when it's really to their benefit more than anything. And they used to actually be able to tell you what your average position was for any particular keyword or ad group or ad. And it might say, so for this past week, we were in position 2.4. That made it pretty easy, okay? You can visualize it. They got rid of that because I think that was just too helpful. And they come up with this concept of average position on top, above the natural listings, and then absolute top, meaning in the first place. So for a particular keyword, you might have this top one, the average position impressions. It might say like 80%. I mean, 80% of the time you were somewhere in the top. That'd be pretty good. You like that? And then it might come back with absolute top, like 30%. So of that time, or the total time, 30% was absolute top, 80% or 70%, whatever the number I said was somewhere up in the top 3 or 4, whatever they displayed. And that's kind of what this will look like on the console when we talk about that. Conversions. This is kind of tricky sometimes because a conversion is basically whatever you want it to be, whatever it is you're tracking. If you're selling something online, it would be a product sale. If you're trying to generate calls, it would be a tracked call. Google can do that. If you're trying to get somebody to fill out a form to sign up for a newsletter or a webinar or some free content, that could be the form fill. And basically the way Google knows is when we get into the conversion session, talk about how you go about getting that created for you by Google. You basically get it's like a little piece of code. Well, I can tell you it's two pieces these days. After you've done it the first time, it's a single piece of code. The first time they get two. One's called a global site tag and whatever the session is. And they'll explain where you put that. So normally if you're doing a sale, on a thank you for making your sale, will be shipped tomorrow. You'll put it right when you get to that session, you've told the person, so Google knows, oh, they got all the way through the cycle, and they made the sale. Or at the end of a form fill, okay, thank you very much. Somebody will be getting back to you by phone, whatever. So it's whatever you tell it. Conversion rate works like the CTR. This is the percentage of time that people took whatever action is you want, or actions, divided by the number of clicks. So out of that, let's say we had 250 clickers on that one example. So if 10% of those took the one or more actions that you wanted, then at 25, that would be a 10% conversion rate, okay? And then cost per conversion, just like the cost per click, the number of conversions over a period of time divided into whatever you spent during the period of time. Okay, so that's all pretty boring, but that'll kind of set the groundwork. So Google Ads used to formerly be called AdWords. We'll talk about the initial setup. So this is something, you'll go through this particular flow one time when you first set up your account. Then afterwards, to be able to add additional keywords and campaigns and ads and so forth, you'll work through the console, which I'll show you after we finish this. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go to Google Ads or ads.google.com. You'll see a screen that changes all the time. It basically gives you a chance to start now to begin the account and campaign setup process. So once you've clicked on that, you get a screen that looks like this. And Google is asking you at this point, okay, so what's your primary goal? And you can have multiple goals, but to get your initial setup done, you pick one. Typical ones that I see with versus all my clients really are either selling stuff online or generating leads, which hopefully also lead to sales. But some people just want to generate website traffic or promoting their brand, or they have a mobile app they want to promote, etc. One thing to note, and probably in the near future I'll get this updated, but they've got a new thing which has now been fully rolled out and implemented called Performance Max campaigns. And it's easy to think about that as being just a collection of any of these things all put into one big gloppy campaign. I have mixed feelings about that. And in general, I would suggest if you're going to, let's take the leads example. If you're looking to get people to come to your site to pick up the phone and call you or to fill out a form, start with that, okay? Don't try and do the Performance Max campaign and have to worry about coming up with graphical images of various types or videos or things like that. Okay, and then in this case, we're going to, within the context of these above, we have different types of campaigns. Search is the classic. You go to Google, you type in a search, and you get an text ad displayed. The display campaigns, those are on the third-party network called AdSense. These are all the different sites that display Google Ads. They utilize images and videos and some other tools. I'm not going to go into the rest of these. Yeah, like all this stuff would also be part of the Performance Max piece. So with these selections, we're looking for leads, we're looking for search, and in this case, we're telling it what we want to call a lead. for the search, and that's an actual form submission in this case. And by the way, you might go back and say, well, we also want to do store visits and phone calls and other kind of things. You can add that later. So this is just to get you through that first setup period, so now that you can do all kinds of other stuff from then on. So that's what I would suggest. You keep it simple, get it started this way, and then you can build out later. And that's going to ask you campaign name and what do they call that? Example search cam. So that's one of the last things it'll ask you from this particular screen. Then we click continue. And now it's going to ask you to basically, you've already told it this, but it'll ask you again, talking about the type of network you want to run on. Now, the search network, that's basically just going to Google or some of its search partners like AOL, and there's several of them that they're just different search engines. They're not third-party websites, and et cetera. These are. Now, one of the things that's really kind of tricky about this is one of the first places, you might want to highlight this, where Google can stick you for some bucks you don't know that you're even spending. You notice that these are both clicked on by default, checked on. If the minute you pick display network, Google's going to go out and start running your ads on any one of hundreds of thousands of different third-party websites. And because that type of advertising usually doesn't convert as well, you get screwed because the bid pricing that Google will use on search, which does typically convert better, will now be used for any of the bids to get your stuff shown on all these third-party websites. So it's really a good way to lose a lot of money. In fact, you can, depending on what your search terms are, there may be more potential, ways to get clicks off of the search network or the display network called AdSense than you might from coming to Google directly. So it's a good way to drain a budget real fast. So what I suggest is make sure that's clicked off. And then if you want to do that kind of advertising later, you can always add to it after you're up and running. Then it's got hidden settings, and I've highlighted a couple of these. It'll ask you for the start date, whenever you're setting this thing up. You don't need to have an end date. It's typically not used here unless you're planning on doing a one-time campaign that'll run for some short period of time and then never run again. We're not going to talk about this. You can check this out on your own later. You don't want to do that until later, but that's how much you notice there because I'll be looking at later. Ad schedule, you will want to do that. Most places, most of the customers I deal with want to have their ads running all day, and and weekends. There's no reason not to. If somebody's going to be buying something off your website, they can do that after hours. They can do that on the weekend.
We have an online question. Is there a way to block advertising on those third-party websites just mentioned?
Yeah, great question. And this is the way to do it. Uncheck this box, okay? Until you're consciously ready, then go in and add display network to it, and that'll keep that from happening. So yes, absolutely.
Can you give a quick example of what just of where else it would appear? Are you talking about like being against? Or?
Yeah, in fact, I've got an example later, but to answer, in fact, I'll talk about the example that you'll see, so it'll be there as a reminder. So you're advertising, let's say you're selling NBA tournament tickets, right? Yeah. And you're a broker for the tickets and you want to sell those. So you advertise on Google and somebody has to go to Google and type in NBA playoff tickets, and then your ad will be shown to them. So that's somebody who's probably pretty interested because they typed it. You go to a third-party website, so maybe you're going to the Miami Herald, newspaper site, and you want to check on your team's how they did last night. And you see this ad, oh, playoff tickets. I wonder how much those cost. So now you've got some looky-loo who has no intention of going to the playoffs, who's just clicked on your ad and cost you $1 or wherever you bid. So that's really the difference, and that's why you probably don't want to do this up front. And I'll give you an example as to how you can take advantage of the display network and use it to make some good money, where you're not paying a premium to get the conversion because they don't convert as well. It's a good question. Yeah, on the ad schedule thing, for most folks, it's all day, 24/7. Unless you've got a situation like, well, I've had clients in the past, they've got live reps who work, let's say Pacific time between 7 in the morning and 6 at night. And they only want to have ads being displayed when somebody could call when they see the ad and have somebody right there ready to pick up the phone and not take a voicemail or something. So there are reasons why you might want to have a different than 24/7 schedule. Okay, then I'll ask you about locations you want to target. In this example, where I'm saying just, the United States. And then this is number 2 of the trip up points where Google is going to get your money if you're not paying attention. So you told it we want to have our targeting our ads in the United States, but then it goes, hey, so it could be somebody whose presence is in the United States or who shows interest, meaning people who have shown interest in your target location. So somebody in Australia that you may not even be able to ship product to, they've done searches relative to things going on in the US. Now suddenly your ad gets shown up there. And when I start working with people, clients for the first time, I almost always run into this. They think they've told it, here's what I want. And then when we take a look at where the locations, what the spend is, they'll see all this wild stuff pop up. So that's one of Google's another one of their landmines. The rest of this you can take the defaults. Oh, I said, well, if you're not taking this, this is the one you want to take. This is another one which can also get you in a little bit of trouble, I guess. So now it's asking you, so what do you want to focus on? And the default is clicks. I'm just interested in generating clicks. Well, no, maybe not. Maybe what you really are more concerned with conversions or the value, the monetary value of your conversion. So Google, if you're going to optimize, do it for this, not for this. Now, sometimes I've worked with clients, they really just want to drive traffic. Yes?
How granular can you get in locations?
It's a great question. In fact, you can get very granular. You can get down to particular zip codes and area codes, cities, states, countries, hemispheres. So yeah, a lot of granularity there in terms of what you can pick and choose. So those of you who are only selling locally, well, you might just pick San Diego or San Diego plus Carlsbad plus Encinitas kind of deal. So you can pick your own territory. And for those of you like, it sounds like your service would be locally delivered.
Right.
So you probably wouldn't want to be advertising over in Maine or Alaska or other places. So you would just specify, either a couple of zip codes, or I'm not sure. Southern California used to be able to pick that as kind of a little standalone thing, but you can take a look on the targeting side. It'll show you what your options are.
If we go a little bit back on the selections, for let's say in my case for visiting stores, I will make more granular the search. If we go back to the initial setup, if I do instead of the leads to store visits or visit
No, it
stores,
doesn't no tracking. Sorry.
Are you talking about geo-targeting? Like if someone goes into a store?
by your location.
That's geo-targeting, right?
Well, no, he wants to be able to track when people actually go into the store. And you can't do that. Now you could track the area code, let's say, was it the store was in, and say, I don't want my ads to show up in, let's say, Encinitas, because that's the only area that your store would serve. You can do that. But then there's no feedback loop that says, oh, well, you had 10 visitors to the store. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so track the conversions. So now it's asking you what you want your bid strategy to be. And there's a couple of options here. I like, in fact, I'm not sure this is the default anymore, but this is what I like to use. This may not be for you, and there's some other kind of options we'll talk about. With the manual CPC, that's where you, the advertiser, get to decide is down to a keyword by keyword basis if you want to, or ad group by ad group, or campaign by campaign basis, what you want your bid to be. And or you can trust Google and say maximize my conversions for me, or maximize the dollar value of the conversion. if you're not gonna, if you don't really want to spend a lot of time with it, because I've had better luck doing this than trusting Google, 80% of the time. But this might be a good one for you down here, okay? Let Google do the bidding for you where you're telling it, get as many conversions for the budget dollar as possible, or maximize the dollar value in that particular budget. Now, if you do the manual thing, if you like the idea of having that kind of control where you can specifically, increase bids on your good keywords, the good converters, and decrease those on that don't perform as well, which you can't do with these, you might want to pick this. This is one of the few pieces of Google automation that I actually trust and had good success with. And that's giving Google a little bit of leeway. So I might say, I'm willing to spend up to $1 for a click on this particular keyword. With the enhanced CPC, what Google will do, if it thinks it can get you a conversion, because that's what total we're going to, let's say, go on a track on, it'll increase your bid. It used to be like up to 22%. It says, okay, I think if we bid a little more, we get you a little higher in the stacks, you have a better chance to get the click and then that conversion. And I had good luck with that. So if you do want to do the manual approach, that would be a good one to pick with it. Okay. And then some hidden hide more settings. Well, there's some things you want to take a look at, and there'll be drop-down menus for it. The conversion tracking, well, I can't think of a reason why you wouldn't want to set that up. Whether you want to track phone calls, whether you want to track form fills or sales, you just want to do that because that's what will allow you to tune your program for effectiveness. And then optimize then the advertisement. We'll talk about that. This is kind of it can be a little bit tricky. The default is optimized for the best performing ads. And if you don't want to spend, if you try to minimize the amount of time that you would spend with AdWords, but give up some of the control and trust Google, that would be fine. I prefer to say Google, just if you got 100 impressions, I want half to go to ad A, half to go to B, and then I'll track the relative performance and decide which ad should I keep, which one I should bump out, try something new. If you're picking the best performing ads approach, then you're going to trust Google to do that for you, and it won't necessarily split you up 50-50. And it decides really early on, oh, we think this ad's better, so it's going to get 90-95% of all the impressions. And then you go and look and say, well, wait a second now, the one that you're cheating has a better conversion rate than the other one does, but the other one just happens to have a better CTR. So you're like, oh, well, that makes sense for Google. May not make sense for you, but that's really your call. Ad extensions, this is something you don't need to worry about right away, but I want to highlight it so when it's time, when you've got your basic stuff set up. These are things which, I think there's a picture down here. So this is an example of an ad that's got a bunch of different ad extensions with it. Now, the main part of the ad is basically, the stuff that's above the black piece above here. That's it. And then with the addition of the phone number, which is a call extension. So in the case of the site links, you can create these little mini ads and take people to different pages on your website. So let's say you're advertising, you got a bunch of Halloween products. So maybe you've got costumes, maybe you've got trick-or-treat bags, maybe you've got candy. So you could highlight all of those different things and then take people to the candy page, to the trick-or-treat costume page, kind of a deal. So that's very powerful. That's probably, if you have to do one thing, you would do that first. In fact, this is just about in the right order of how you want to do it. Now, the call-out extensions, this little black line here, where it's got digital growth partner, online marketing, those are like little additional snippets about your business or product. They're not linked to anything, but they can help explain more about what you're doing or other aspects of your business. So it's just like a little additional piece of text. Those are really easy to set up because you don't have to worry about selecting a page to take people to or creating a full mini ad. Call extensions, well, that's the phone number. And when when your ad shows up on a mobile device, that's a situation where you can just punch the little phone button, it'll take you right to it. So that's really nice. Assuming you want phone calls, I've actually had some customers that for whatever reason didn't want to be bothered by people calling them on the phone when those could be some of your best leads. You can look up structured snippets. That's another little call out extension type goodie that you can look at. I would suggest after you've done these other three. Okay. This is obviously hard to see, but this is what it looks like all put together after you've gone through all those different elements. And then you get down to the bottom and it's okay, we're done and ready to go on to the next piece. So now we're at step 2 of this initial setup process. For now, we've got our basic account set up and our campaign. Now we're looking to create our first ad group. And let's see, yeah. So this is the default is standard, and that's the one you want to stick with. I wouldn't worry about dynamics until you're way into your program. It's going to ask you your ad group name, and this is whatever you want to call it. I have my own little naming scheme that you guys can do whatever you would like. That makes most sense. But where I might have like a prefix in front of wherever the topic is, so that, like with the Halloween candy. If that's the most important thing to me, I might put 1 Halloween candy, and then a suffix might be dash new, and then the start date. So when I'm trying to look at comparative performance, I can, a campaign that was recently started versus one that was started 8 months ago. Well, if you're looking at an 8-month window, you're not going to get a clear picture. So that's something I like to do, but whatever makes sense to you in terms of dealing with your ad groups, which are your keywords collections. Laying out your default bid, and this will apply to all the keywords to start with, and that's not a bad way to go. And then you can budget up or down or bid up or down depending on actual performance. This little piece is kind of interesting. This is asking for keywords. Now we're going to talk about how to generate keywords, and there's some tools to help you do that. To get yourself started, though, you don't have to go through all that process. In this case, this is a company whose primary products are widgets and gizmos. And so just to get yourself off and running, we've entered that in here. And then down at the bottom, save and continue. So we've taken the first step. And now it's going to ask you, okay, so we want to create ads with that information we just entered. So that's step 3. And we want to give it the final URL. That's where you're actually taking the visitor, okay? You want to take them to this particular candy page. Display path, this is an interesting concept and it fools people. So basically it's your domain, and then you get 2 little blocks of 15 characters that you can use as additional, I guess actually marketing messaging. So like this might be Halloween candy, and then maybe you've got and costumes or whatever you want to put in there. It's not an actual web page. It does need to be the same website, the same domain as you use up the actual URLs. But other than that, this is really for marketing purposes. And you can have those changed from one ad group to the next. Headlines, and it's just telling you here for optimal performance, make sure you include these keywords, and it's whatever keywords that are most important to you. Now you see up, and maybe it's not really obvious here, but you can have up to 15 of these headlines. Each can be up to 30 characters long. Then your next set, you can have up to 4 descriptions. And these can be real long. These are up to 90 characters. And by the way, like on the headlines, you only have to give it 3. Okay, it's got a minimum of 3, minimum of 2, but what Google will do by giving it more text to work with, it'll rotate stuff and hopefully come up with your best performance. Yes?
On the keyword bid, how do we know what is the right amount?
The answer is you probably not to start with, but I've got in the bid strategy section, you'll find out that what I suggest is you start off with low bids and then work up until you're actually spending it, whatever your budget is. That way you're not, not overpaying. So anyway, with the, you get up to 4 of these, up to 90 characters. You'll see this little pin with a 2. One of the things that you can do with these any of these particular elements, headlines or descriptions, you can say, look, for this particular, in this case, description, I want that in description position 2. Now, what Google will do, they'll swap all kinds of stuff around, but as you can imagine, so you got, 15 different headlines, some of which would be very appropriate to be the first line up there. And then the second and third line, which you usually have less important stuff, well, fine, rotate that around. But what Google will do, if you're not pinning anything, it'll put whatever it wants to in there. Now, there's the general recommendation is don't overpin, but if you've got some absolute like this headline, I never want that to be my first thing, okay? So you might pick 2 or you might pick 3, okay? Now, this is what the ads look like. So you've entered 15 headlines and 4 descriptions, and this is what the ad will look like when it actually displays. So it's picked 3 of our headlines and popped those up top. It's created this fake URL utilizing the 2 15-character path entries, and then the descriptions, okay? And they pick these particular 2. And what will happen is for each time there's a new searcher that would trigger your ad based upon your keyword, it'll come up with different combinations of all of this. And then over time, tune for you. And so now this is what the completed create ads screen looks like, all the stuff we just talked about. So we tell it we're done with that and then save and continue. So now we're at the final stage, which is setting up your billing. As you'll find out, nothing is free with Google, but you can tame it and make money with it. So where are you from? What time zone are you in? If you have a promotional code, sometimes you'll get those from Google and you can add it in there. Typically, they're worth about $100 in free advertising if you have one. Payment profile. So there's, oops, back here. There's actually 2 types. This is the default and probably what's going to be most appropriate for you, but you can also have your own personal account. For some reason you wanted to promote yourself, you could pick up your own name as your account type, personal account. Oops. Organization name, whatever you want to use there. Credit card information. This little gotcha, you'll see a temporary $50 authorization fee, but then they'll back it out. I don't know if I've actually noticed that. None of my clients, when we're setting up stuff from scratch, that mentioned they'd seen it, but I guess it's a warning because you might. One of the things I recommend, and they don't cover it here, but it's a good idea to have a backup credit card. So whatever you've done for your primary is here, but by having a backup credit card, you won't get some message from Google at 3 in the morning saying, hey, we had some problem, charging your bank and therefore your ads have been shut down. That's what they do. And if it hits on a late Friday and you're not monitoring over the weekend, you could lose a couple of days worth of sales potentially. So if you set up a secondary card, it'll ask you the same kind of stuff and then automatically roll forward to that if there's a problem with your first card. Submit. And now we're done. That's your initial setup. Now you've actually got something ready to go. Okay. So at that point, when you log into your account, you'll get a screen that looks like this. This is the console. We'll talk about some of the key elements here. One of the things about any of the screens that I talk about, you'll see these redacted areas. These are all based upon the live account screenshots that I've taken. The accounts don't mind if we share this stuff, but they don't really want to have you're having to figure out who they are. And for some of them with the campaign names and so forth, ad group names, you might be able to figure out who the account is. So when you get to this screen, I think it'll probably start you off in the overview screen, which is okay once you're up and running. It'll give you some useful data. But when you're getting started, you go to the campaign screen, you pick the campaign in the left-hand tab, and that's what will give you this look. And what we've told it up here is, show us all of the enabled campaigns, currently enabled campaigns. Some of the other things we've talked about will show you how you can add to and make changes, ad groups, the ad extensions, landing pages, keywords, setup, settings, which will take you back to some of the settings that we talked about if you want to make changes there. Change history is kind of interesting. I keep a log whenever I'm making changes for my clients' accounts, whatever I've done and the reason behind it, because 6 months from now, it's why did I do that? What this will tell you, what the change history, built-in change history will do, will tell you what you did and when. Like May 31st, you added an ad. or May 31st, you increased the budget. But if you don't remember why you did that, if there was a purpose, that's lost. It won't give you any insights there, but it is handy. Okay, so that's those. We're looking at just the enabled ads, any campaigns that we've paused or deleted. Those aren't going to be shown. We have filtering capabilities, which we'll talk about a little later on. This is the range we're looking at. This is January 1st to October 31st, 2021. So that's what this data represents. Status useful information here. This particular one, you'll see, eventually if you're doing the startup and increase your bids until you hit your budget, at some point you're going to be limited by your budget. Okay, and that'll just say, well, you can do one of two things. You can either decrease your bids a little bit, pause something potentially, or increase your spend if you're happy with the results, the conversion results. And then you'll see these things sometimes. Google is really kind of funny this way. So when you're setting up your ads, and we'll talk more about that in a bit, it does a really good job of letting you know if you've done some kind of a no-no. Okay, but then over time they'll change their mind about stuff. They'll become tighter, whatever. And then this ad may have been running for even a while. Now suddenly has been paused, and this will give you an indication that there's some problem there. Yes.
Is there a way to see like what your competitors are bidding? Do they still show it?
No, that's a good. See, that's an example that way back when. I don't know about Google so much, but Yahoo would actually tell you what the bids were above you and beneath you. So it made it, okay, well, I'll do this. This is all I need to do. But nobody does that anymore.
So you're just guessing what you're willing to pay, pretty much.
Well, yeah, that's why I say if you start slow, because when you're just getting started, you don't know what your conversion performance is going to be. Like for a top performing keyword, conversion wise, I may be willing to spend $5. On the other hand, if I've got a dog keyword that's just doing nothing for me, I might want to cut its, let's say, $1 bid down to 25 cents or even pause it. So if you start small and then you let yourself grow and more, then you start to gather conversion information, then you'll be able to see, these two are ones I really can afford to bid more on because they get great conversion costs, let's say. And these other ones I can start reducing they're just leaving the same, but that's the way to do it. And that'll keep you out of, if you started off at $5, you might burn through your budget, your daily budget, 10 clicks or, whatever, depending on what competitive bids were. Okay, so other ton of things, again, you can set your custom date range, whatever you want. There's some built-in ones like this month, last month, this week, last week. This little thing here that looks like, it's called segment. And basically, when you tell Google you want it to segment your data, in this case, let's say I wanted to look at this data for these campaigns on a month-by-month basis. So the segmentation I would pick would be month by month. And now each one of these would be blown out with, in this case, 10 months worth of data, and then totals would be the same too. So it gives you a way of looking from this particular chart, what that looks like in that time period. So you can look at hourly data, daily data, weekly data, etc. Columns, this list of columns here, this is all selectable. This just happens to be how I like to work with it. I like to have the conversion data, including phone call data right up front, and how much I spent, the impressions, clicks, and all the rest of that stuff we talked about. But you can add stuff, change stuff, move things around to whatever your preference. And there are a lot of other columns, by the way, things that you might want to look at some point in time. Oops, I'm sorry, I almost forgot this one. Any of this data you can download into either a spreadsheet or a Word doc kind of format if you want to share that with others. Unless you've got like just a whole bunch of multiple screens worth, I just do that. Like in this one, I would just do a cut and paste kind of a deal. But that is a nice little tool if you want to share your data with somebody. Reports. Basically, this is a way of getting a lot of additional data that might be inconvenient to look at on this particular screen. Like maybe you want to look at 4 years worth of monthly data. Okay, well, that's In fact, there's like a 15 line limit as to how granular you can get with the segment. Not so with the reports. Tools and settings we'll talk about. Virtually any screen you're on, you can get help about what's on there. On the notifications, this is indicating there's some kind of a message. Sometimes they're important, sometimes not so much. But if you see that, if you see it with little asterisk, normally there'll be a little bar that'll say, okay, well, here's what the notification is. But if not, and you see that exclamation point, then you click on that and see what they want you to see. Tools and settings, these are important ones. So with the billing, this is, if you need to check, your credit cards and what your monthly statements from Google have been, setup stuff, we talked about that. Measurement, this is how you would set up your conversions. And we're not going to talk about that. Planning, this is, we talk about developing your keyword basket. It's this planning, that's part of the planning function to develop your keywords. So on the measurement side, you say this is where you'd set up your conversions. If you have Google Analytics and want to integrate that, you can get started with that there. Attribution is, I guess I'm not going to get into that so much. But if you get to the point where you want to have a better handle on kind of the flow through how your sales, et cetera, were pulled, and you want to be able to say, okay, I want to look at not just the last click that generated the sale, but maybe you want to have it break it down into all the clicks. So if somebody searched on a term that triggered one of your ads, they came and visited, and then came back 2 more times before they actually took the action. Well, this, if you had attribution set up for linear, which every time there was one, it would break it up. So the 3 different independent pieces of the action would be broken out. Planning, keyword planner, we talked about that. That's the big piece there that you want to take a look at, you will want to use. To the account settings, so this should look pretty familiar, the account name. This can get you in a lot of trouble. This is another one of those you want to circle. With ad suggestions, Google had this brilliant idea a couple of years back that, we're not going to give you the suggestion of what we think you ought to do, but we're going to auto apply it unless you tell us not to. And that could involve, changing bids, changing your ads, adding ads based on what it thinks might be best. And that's some of the stuff it comes up with is just way off the deep end. And you can click on this and then basically look at what's in there. Like some of the things are fine. Like one of the things will say, do you want to be able to have your stuff broken out so you can see who's buying what based upon audience type? That's helpful. If you see a new audience that you think is appropriate, great. But I don't want you changing ads. I don't want you, there's a whole bunch of stuff that will actually change how the system will actually work and spend your money. And that's what you want to change. Just get out of that. Don't automatically apply them. And see, this is always tricky. It's like, yeah, they don't recommend that you take control of your own destiny. They'd rather have you give them the money and use it their own way. Auto tagging, yes, you want to do that. We're not going to talk about call tracking here, but you can look at that. Call reporting, if you want to be able to track phone calls, that's where you would turn that on. So now we're looking at the measurement. We want to set up our conversions, how we actually track the sales, how we actually track the form fills. So this is an example of an account that's got, I guess we have 5 different conversion actions set up, 3 of which I set up, 2 of which were like automatically applied, like they have an unbalanced, use unbalanced, and it's got its own little tracking tool that inserted. I'm not sure if they inserted that themselves or some other tool, but these are ones that I had set up. And what you basically do here are telling Google, based upon a little code snippet, which will show in a bit, I want to track the sale. I want to track this form fill. I want to track a contact us form or an e-newsletter sign up form. Now, what you see here with these 3, you'll see 2 of them are unverified. Basically, like in this particular case, we had the tracking codes for each of these, but the account hadn't implemented those yet. So Google can't see it, so it doesn't know if it's there or not. So that's just an indication as a reminder, hey, get on that. If you want to track these things, then you're going to have to set up the codes. And this is just telling you for this particular guide that it hasn't had any conversions in the last 7 days. So that's, I mean, you may not get ads or conversions every week. Phone call leads, that's what that'll show up there. Contact form, again, the code wasn't installed yet, so Google can't see it. But that's what that looks like. In fact, the view of this has changed a little bit over time, but the same kind of data is in there, and particularly where you can take a look at the accounts for what you've got for any particular, whatever the period of time is, and then if there's some issue. Sometimes you'll be running along just fine, and suddenly it'll go unverified. Basically, somebody may have changed the web page that tracking code was on, so it's no longer being triggered. So you want to check that every so often. Now we're back to looking at the tracking of the conversions and a couple things that you can do. We've talked about the website type action. Somebody's filled out a form, signed up for an e-newsletter. I don't have it here. Well, I should. I had one customer that was actually trying to sell an online app years ago. Probably not your case. Phone numbers to be able to tell which phone numbers you want to track. And if you have separate data, like you may be tracking conversions with some other tool, you want to roll that back into AdWords, you can do that, but that's more of a manual process. And I suspect most of you won't be doing that for a while. Okay, so I guess the key thing to say about this, so the conversion action, we're setting this up as at a page load as a conversion action. So in this case, if I'm selling something online, it would be a thank you very much page. Your order will be on its way. And it's giving you some information about what the action is and how to place the code. It'll ask you what kind of a lead it is. That's for making it easier for you to figure out and remember. So in this case, if it's a purchase, well, that's for if you're selling something. If you want to actually track how much stuff gets added to your cart versus actual purchase, you could add that as well. Contact forms, lead forms. So all these kind of little ways that you can make it easier to sort out what the conversion is. And if you want to track where somebody has just, maybe it's not part of, well, I'll give you an example. So let's say you just want to track how many people make it to a particular page on your website, okay? You can, with this little goodie, you can also do that. So maybe you just want to track people that got to the contact us form, but didn't necessarily fill it out, or how many people did look into your company background if they were interested in that, which wouldn't have its own action, but you give the page, so any of the PPC visitors who made it, that page would be triggered. Okay. So that would be a save and continue. So more about campaigns. These are the big picture things. So this top level breakout, we had the 4 campaigns on the chart. Each of those campaigns has multiple ad groups within it. So looking at those top 4 level things, so why would you break up let's say you got 2,000 keywords into different campaigns? Well, people use that for budget allocations. So there may be certain product groups that go together, like the Halloween candy versus the Halloween costumes. Or maybe you've got 2 different types of Halloween candies and you want to have a big budget for the one, not so big of a budget for the other. So by breaking those out into different campaigns, that's a good way to do that. One of the biggest things people use it for, I think it's a great use, is geographic targeting. So let's say you sell in the US, but you also sell to Europe, okay? You might want to have different bidding. You might want to have different messaging for the Europeans versus the US. So you might have a campaign, the US campaign, maybe everything's the same in the European campaign, but you can independently control bids and budgets because it's a different geographic region. And then this is how you control the search versus the display network. Search campaigns are by themselves, display network campaigns are by themselves, so that you can control your bids and maximize your performance. Ad groups, now within those campaigns, so within, let's say, the Halloween candy, we might have breakouts for chocolate candy, for hard candy, for who knows what else. So you take the keywords for the different types and put those in their own ad groups, those keywords with common themes, because now you can have better targeted ads. And you can take people who click on your ads to the most appropriate landing page. Like for the chocolate candies, they might go to this page. For the hard candies, they go down here. So here's what it might look like. You've got 2 different campaigns with multiple ad groups in each and different sets of keywords on each of the ad groups. So this is the example I gave earlier. We were talking about the display network, that Miami Herald example. So somebody comes to Google and types in NBA Finals tickets, and they get an ad and then some organic listings. If they happen to be searching their MiamiHerald.com site to find out what their team did the night before, and now they're presented with 4 different Google ads, and now you get you can pick up a lot of the looky-loos. Okay, people you don't really think are going to be good targets for you. Okay, so that's why you want to break those out into 2 different campaign types. And this is one of those things when Google first came up with the display network. It was a dangerous thing because you couldn't do independent bidding. You either did search or search and display network, but they couldn't be separated, and it was dangerous. But that changed a long time ago. So this is an example. This is the end result of testing. So this is live client data. So what our ultimate goal was to make the display network as profitable as the search side of things. And this is just luck that we ended up with the cost per conversion. It ended up after the test of being exactly the same. It could have been a little bit different and that wouldn't have been a problem. So that was the goal, to make sure we weren't paying a premium. Now, throughout our testing, we realized that the click-through rates is typically much less on the display network, okay? However, and this is live, there was 10 times as many impression opportunities on the display network as there was on straight search. But if you run through the math, so we generated at the end game, when it was tuned, we get 4,100 clicks on the search, more than 8K, more than double that on the display network side of things. And this was kind of the key. This is what we were changing. We were modifying our bids such that we ended up, after the conversion rate, we ended up at or close to the same price. As it turned out, a little less than half of the CPC, because the conversion rate was just about half, got us to this equivalent price. And we actually generated just a little bit more than double what we just had on search alone. So after you got your search kind of set up and ready, and you kind of know what you're doing, this can be a really good way to expand your potential for sales and conversions. But that's how you would do it. Okay, so geo-targeting, which you mentioned earlier, this is an example of another client. These guys were targeting, well, this was part of a large international commercial real estate outfit. And this particular subgroup was covered the state of Kentucky and the city of Louisville being part of that. But if you know anything about Louisville, Kentucky, that's a big hub for big brown, okay, the UPS stuff. So you have a lot of companies outside of the city and state who want to have facilities there, warehousing facilities, because they're right there by the hub. So they also wanted to be able to gather leads from people who didn't necessarily live in this area, but who were looking for property in this area. So we ended up with 3 different geo-targeted campaigns. And by doing that, we talked about, you can have different budgets, you can have different bids and so forth, to be able to get better control of making sure that you have your cost per conversion under control. But that's how you do that. Now, let's see what I want to talk about this. Okay, so looking at the campaign settings tab, these are the 4 campaigns we talked about. columns providing information which you would know. I mean, because this is the stuff we did in the initial setup. So these are all search campaigns. They're all using the cost per click. You control it yourself using the enhanced CPC model, the different networks it's on. This one is, these two are, oh, I guess there was a display network one in there. But again, it's broken out separately. Ad rotation, this is a setting that they've actually stopped using this. You have to just say rotate indefinitely, not versus do not optimize. It sounds a little bit different, but that was the one where it's you would control it yourself. When the campaign was started, the language and other information about the campaign, just to check and make sure. One of the things I found as clients have added campaigns over time, these things will get out of sync. Like they didn't realize that, oh, wait a second, I didn't specify US, I'm getting the whole world, or wait a second, why does this one have a different ad schedule? So after you've been running for a while, it's not a bad idea to check the campaign settings just to make sure everything's set up the way you want. So that's what that is a recap of that. Performance analysis. This, as I mentioned, you can do segmentation by, time of day, day of week, hours, etc. You can also do, let's see if I get this. Let me show how this is another one that can be useful to you after you've been running for a while. So you can actually see on a campaign by campaign or ad group by ad group basis where you're getting your clicks from. Is it mobile devices? Is it PC? And you can make bid adjustments. Like sometimes you'll find that the cost per conversion for, let's say, mobile is higher than it is for your desktop. So now you can make bid adjustments. So you might do something like a negative 10% bid adjustment on mobile for this campaign if that's what it shows. So both of those can be useful. And that's just what the time breakouts look like. So for any particular campaign, it's going to give you the up to 14 of those months. And this is the example showing the breakouts for segmentation for mobile device. And you notice that one of the things I added here was I only want to look at the campaigns where there's been at least one conversion. Okay. And this is what it's based is showing you all the information for this back to it. You can see on a device basis, like this one is kind of interesting, I guess. Well, let me show you, I'll show you what's typical. So this particular campaign up here, it's got the, you'll see where, hey, wait a second, this campaign, we are getting a lot more mobile searchers. Okay, that's where our conversions are coming from. Cost per conversion, even at different conversion rates because the bid prices are different, they're all pretty close. Those are all within striking distance of each other. In other cases, it may be very different. Like, in fact, it's the opposite down here for this one, where you've got more on the search side than mobile side. Cost per conversion, hugely different from this campaign to this. That may be good, that may be bad, depending on what those are for. So I'll give you an idea of how you might use the segmentation. And as I mentioned, for each of these campaigns, you could do plus or minus bid adjustments on any of these things to be able to get its performance in line with what you want. Okay. What 210? Okay, give me one more section, then we'll give you a very little break time. Okay, so about keywords, so creating your basket. This is an old advice, but it's still good. You want to make sure that you want to steer clear of one or two word keywords. I'll give you an example. So let's say you sell an industrial strength mobile device that's got special shielding because of the EMP and other kind of impacts you can get in certain facilities, maybe ruggedized because it can be dropped and broken. So you sell a very specialized kind of mobile phone. Well, if you just typed in, if you had a keyword mobile phone, your device would fit in that, but you can imagine probably 99% of the people searching on a mobile phone aren't looking for your kind of mobile phone. Okay, so typically you want to have, not grotesquely long, but more than one or two keywords. And by doing that, you'll avoid high competition, you'll avoid the high bid prices, which typically go along with competition, and you get less target traffic if you keep it to 1 or 2 keywords. So that's the sweet spot. So how do you go about generating a large basket of quality keywords? And the key to this is you can't have too many qualified keywords. In other words, keywords that would be a good fit. Somebody searching on this keyword would be a good prospect. You can't have too many non-qualified keywords, okay? So how do you go about getting the qualified ones? Well, you conduct what's called a keyword stemming analysis. And it's kind of like the little tree example over here, where you'll develop a list of seed terms when you first get started. And you get that from brainstorming with your colleagues. You know, how do you talk about your product service on the website, collateral, customer correspondence. If you have a customer service team, you know, they can give you, well, customers often call, you know, talk about this in this way, give you an idea for additional seed. And then competitors' websites are a great way to come up with all the seeds. And the idea being that at the end of the process, you've got your seeds here. When you go through the stemming analysis, then you end up filling out all these branches and sub branches with little leaves, which are keywords which fit for you. The tool to use, there's a feed tool called Word Tracker, which used to, I'm not even sure it's still around. But Google has gotten really good with its keyword planner. It's free. It's very, very functional these days. No charge for it. One of the benefits of using the Google Planner is that they'll give you search volumes using real data that they have. The Word Tracker and other people, they have no access to what's actually searched in Google. So it's just almost, I can't think of a way why you really want to go this route these days, but it's there. And you get to this, you get to the kind of keyword basket up that little tools thing that's up on the top right on the console, keyword planner. And it'll ask you this, are you looking to discover new keywords or get sales volume and forecasts? And you can get that from the keyword, this side of it as well. So particularly when you're getting started, you can kind of put that one aside for later. You want to pick this guy, and then you give it, I think it'll take up to 10 at a time these days. It used to be pretty much unlimited, and you know, Google didn't like that, I guess. So now 10 at a time, so you tend to come up, you know, you start out with your top 10 seeds, and then you'll add it like this. Get the results for me. And what we're getting out here, first of all, is it'll show you for whatever keywords it's come up with, which we'll talk about in a second. It'll give you the volume, search volume over time. Now, this is a snapshot that's just the past 12 months, basically. Whereas down here, one of the options is give me all the data that you've got, and now you can see how the performance has been over time. It's kind of interesting to know whatever this product, the financial product was, during this period, there was huge interest in terms of search volume, and it kind of tapered back down to where it was before. The total number, and then the mobile devices. So you can see, you know, for some products, you'll see the red almost bumped up against the blue. Other products, it's hardly there at all. And this one is, well, this would be a B2B type product, so that would make sense. A lot of those folks are doing their searches on their, you know, PC at the office and not their cell phone. So this is an example of what it might come back with. It'll tell you what the volume is over whatever period of time you're looking at. In this case, it was just the cash flow forecasting. And then this, and it could be a huge long list of keywords that it came up with that it thinks would be relevant. And these are the actual search volumes that Google has seen over that period of time. Okay. And by the way, these little charts are kind of interesting too. If you look at the high level stuff, you get one kind of view, but then you can see how each one of these individual keywords has its own little performance characteristics, okay, which can also be informative for you. What you can do is right from this screen, you can check a box and it'll populate it into an ad group for you. I prefer to just download the whole smash, sort through them myself, and then just add whatever I choose back into it. But your mileage may vary. That's the little download button. So here's an example. So we're a very specialized company. We only sell the Elvis style blue suede shoes, nothing else. So once a year, Elvis's birthday, or when they come out with a new Elvis movie like they have, suddenly the popularity of this shoe is just through the roof. But that's what we sell. Now, there are different kind of match options where you're telling Google, so how do I go about matching a search to my search terms relative to the shoes? And since my keyword is blue suede shoes, and that's the one I'm advertising on, if you have anything else besides that, it's not going to match. Caveat, Google has changed that over time to make it easier for them to stick you with stuff that you may not exactly want. So it's getting sloppy, and it's acting more like the second one, which is phrase match. It actually be more like the third one, I should say. So this is pretty restrictive, as you can imagine. So blue suede shoes on sale or for sale, or where to buy blue suede shoes, those would all be great terms, but with the exact match, you're not going to get that. So you can open it up a bit, and now you're telling Google, okay, so it's got to have this phrase, but you can have stuff on the front end or the back end of it, not in between. And that's just changed recently, in the past year. So you can see where it's, you can, with that, you can get some stuff you don't want. You know, you don't want that, you want the used, but you're gonna also be missing out on the for sale. Now this, which is a beautiful concept, it was set up initially. Now I'll tell you what how it morphed into something really good. So this is saying, okay, I'll take the blue suede shoes, but you can stick it any order, any sequence. You can have stuff inserted front end, back end. And now you can see over here, well, that would allow things like, you know, blue suede tennis shoes and, you know, blue suede pumps and just blue suede cloth. Because one of the things about this, and they didn't tell you about this, I found out early on, they could even drop a keyword. Okay, like I had a client that sold LED Christmas lights in the very earliest days when those were available. They were early pioneers, and they wanted LED Christmas lights. And what was happening was, and this was with, by having that, with this broad match, they were dropping it. We were getting all kinds of people clicking, looking for incandescent lights. So it created all kinds of problems. It opened it up, it gave you the maximum potential, but also opened up for maximum budget spend. So what they had done following that was this is the beautiful concept, was broad match modifier. You put a plus sign in front of the terms that have to be there. You can't substitute blue for red. It's got to be suede, and it's got to be shoes. It can't be pumps or whatever. Now, in Google's infinite wisdom, which got rid of all this kind of crap. Now, in Google's infinite wisdom, they dropped the broad match modifier. Anything you had as a broad match modifier is now treated like the phrase match, which, you know, now you got to be more careful if you don't have the right combos of stuff. And you might have like in this case, let's see, blue, if you had like blue and red suede shoes for sale, that'd be fine. You sell the blue ones. Well, with the phrase match, that wouldn't click. You wouldn't get it because it's not the core piece. And I still, well, I'm not going to speculate as to what I think the reason for doing that is, but it's just kind of a crappy thing in my estimation, and takes away some of the control that you, the advertiser, had over what got matched to you. Negative keywords. Now, one of the things you can do to really help yourself out, particularly if you're using anything other than exact match, like with the phrase match, you can get stuff added on the front end or back end. In this case, I don't care if I don't want anybody who's looking for free blue suede shoes. I don't want anybody who's looking for used blue suede shoes. So any of this, in fact, this is why I like doing the keyword analysis, where I download all the keywords that Google suggested. As I go through them, it's like, yes, 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 no. Well, why don't I want that? Oh, that one had used in it, or that one had other terms. So that's a good way to come up with the keywords you want to use as negatives. And you'll save yourself getting clicks on stuff that you don't want. Okay. And you can do negatives across an individual ad group or across entire campaigns, which, you know, then you can do that for all your campaigns. So you might never want somebody who's looking for free goodies coming to you on your dime. So what's the result? Well, with your keyword planner, you come up with a large list of qualified keywords, as well as some good negative keywords, so that you got all the best stuff right here. Here's my best prospect list of keywords. Here's the stuff to keep the trash searches away. Okay, so we mentioned, or I mentioned this a little bit earlier about bid strategies. And besides making a particular bid, like I want to bid 50 cents or a buck, there are generalized strategies in terms of how you want to approach bidding. I think I got my,
Oh, just click the mouse somewhere on the screen.
there we go, thanks. So this may sound kind of funny, but I've seen this too many times. This is typically driven by a CEO as a top-down kind of a thing. Whatever the keyword set is, we want to own this space. You know, if we're not in the top position, we're not going to be considered a real player. So you got to keep us up in this top spot. And that can be a problem. First of all, most products, people just don't click on one thing and then make the purchase. Now, maybe if you're talking about buying a box of pencils, that may be it because it's not a big deal. But anybody purchasing any kind of product of value is going to at least click down through a couple of the listings, okay? So it's not a matter of being seen. And the idea that you would be willing to spend top dollar, you know, the most per click, just so you could be up in that top spot, really just gets to be a waste of money. And this is a real live example. This is what happened before they became a client. So you had this, company, and they sold local area networking products to be installed in buildings. So these were like big 6-digit sales that they made, okay? So they can afford to spend a lot per click, even at a relatively low conversion rate, because, you know, if they could turn a $3,000 click spend into a $250,000 contract, then that was fine with them. They were very happy. So they had the VP set the account up for them, and what they had done, they decided they'd be willing to spend $10,000 per month on their clicks, and they were willing to spend, it was like like 17 bucks per click. A lot of money, but again, with any kind of a conversion rate, then they're going to make all the money up and then some. So they had it set up like that, and they tracked it, I guess, for the first couple of months, and what they were spending was about $1,200 a month on average, even though the budget said they could spend $10,000. Well, then a competitor came in, and the way this works, and I think I'm not sure if I talk about that here or not. No. So I'll talk about how the concept works. So if you bid $1, maybe that puts you in the second spot. And the guy right beneath you in terms of bid, he bids 75 cents. If somebody clicked on your ad, you would only spend 75 plus 1 cent, 76 cents. So it's a drop down price to wherever the guy right beneath you would bid plus 1 penny. It's all fine. So apparently they're going along, and I guess let's say they were averaging a buck a click to get that $1,000 spent. Apparently some other competitor came in 3 or 4 months into it, and they bid like $15 a click. So instead of having a drop down from a $17 bid down to a $1.50 bid or whatever it was, now the guy's like right on them. So now they're spending like, $15.01 on average per click. So they generated the full $10,000 month 1, another $10,000 month 2, and this was going to the CEO's credit card. And he wasn't used to seeing $10,000 a month coming in from Google. And apparently the VP who had set this up wasn't paying any attention. And so the CEO, I guess he comes to me, he said, with his face is red, you talk to Google, you get that money back. I just raked him a new one. Well, so the guy gets on the phone to Google and explains the situation. He gets the Google rep goes, well, now wait a second. Did you bid $10,000 a month? Well, yeah. I mean, did you budget? Yeah. Did you bid $17 a click max? Well, yeah. So we basically did exactly what you asked, right? Well, yeah. I didn't give him a cent back. So it's a couple of examples there. This is kind of a stupid strategy. You don't want to start at the top. You don't necessarily want to target the top position or even anywhere close necessarily. And the other part is you need to watch this stuff. You can't like set it up and then walk away for 3 months because you could have a nasty surprise. Here's another thing. Now, see, this is, if I were to apply this next one to my example of Halloween products, there's not much time left between now. In fact, I got a customer in exactly the situation right now. They've released a pumpkin spice coffee. Well, that's popular between now and like it's early December, I guess. But now is the big season, and the idea is we want to get in there as fast as possible. So in this case, we're going to do all the other stuff. We do all the keyword analysis, get the right basket, the right ads, and everything. But now instead of starting off low and then bidding it up, we're taking a chance and we're bidding a little bit higher. So we don't have to go through a multi-week learning period to see how high we can go to keep within the budget. Again, you got to watch really close because now, so let's say you start off with that with the $2 bid and your budget limit immediately. Okay, well, if you don't want to spend more money, then what you're probably going to do is drop that $2 bid down to $1 and see what that gets you. And if you've got room, and until you hone in on the price that will come up with an average CPC that will align with your maximum budget spend. Here's what I consider to be the best bet. So you want to maximize your lead flow, your conversions on a fixed budget. And this is the process where you do start small. In fact, I don't remember if I talked about this. Maybe go to slide 2. So anyway, so this is where I might start off with a 10-cent bid, and it's like I'm not using up much of my budget. And I raise it up to 25. I still have a lot of budget until I get to maybe 77 cents or whatever. And now I'm like just hitting the budget every day. This is the best for most folks. Now, once you've figured out what your cost per customer acquisition is, or your cost per sale is, and within your budget, you're hitting your budget, but you've got more room to maneuver. So let's say you're willing to spend $5 for a lead, and at your budget level, you're only spending $3 for a lead. So I might say, great, I'll increase my budget. I'm willing to spend more. I might be willing to increase my bids a little bit to get more, as long as I'm within that $5 window. So after you've been running for a while, this can be a great way to now leverage what you've done and then ratchet up your conversion potential without sacrificing higher cost per conversion. And now I've run into people that want to test the waters, which is fine. It's a great strategy. But they use it in the context of, okay, well, I'm not sure if I want to do this yet, so I won't do my keyword stemming analysis. I'll come up with a couple of top-of-mind keywords. I'm not going to spend a lot of time thinking through what I really should be doing with my ads. I'll just slap some stuff together. I'll take people to my home page, okay, and maybe they'll figure out where they can make the purchase or not. And then we'll see how that works out. What I will tell you is that's a total waste of time, okay? It's like garbage in, garbage out. Now, if you do all the right stuff, start small, raise your bids up, you do your good keyword basket, you take advantage of some of the ad best practices that we'll talk about, then you can determine accurately if this is going to be a good marketing medium for you. So this is beware of the self-defeating test. If you don't do the right stuff, then don't even bother. Okay, here it is. So I won't even walk you through the little exercise here. So this is when, so let's say you have a $100 budget. And if you were to spend $1 per click, you found that got you into the first position, so you're right up there on top. How many clicks per day are you going to get? 100. Now, if you're able to get away with a 50-cent bid, you're in the second position or lower, but you're using up all your budget. Now you can get 200 of these visitors. And if it's 25 cents, you're lower still, but you're still able to use your budget. Now you've got 400 visitors for the same $100 price. Now, then you ask the question, well, which is better? And it's not really a tricky answer, but it's a key fact to know. And Google has done studies on this, and I've seen some of the data, and I do believe this. Whether your ads started out in the first position, second, third, fourth, or fifth, the conversion rate, once they get to your site, is virtually the same. Now, the lower you are in the stack, the fewer clicks you're going to get. But you're not going to impact your conversion rate negatively. So fine, okay, so if I can only afford to be in this position, or I want to maximize, my conversion potential, I'm fine with this. Now, it may be that a 10 cent bid, you're not spending your whole $100. So then you say, well, somewhere between 10 cents and 25 cents, it would be my sweet spot in terms of maximizing my click potential. And something else, and this is one of the reasons that from that example, you got to be aware of big creep. New competitors, old competitors entering new bids, changing their ads, etc., to be better than yours, all can lead to decreasing results over time. And then Google pulls stuff all the time, which will impact you positively or negatively, but it seems like most of the time you're doing stuff that helps them and not you. So that would be the key to bidding. So looking at keyword performance analysis, this is from that console where you selected keywords, and then underneath that search keywords, what you've actually entered, negative keywords that you've actually entered. This is an interesting one. I don't think I talk about this in this presentation now. The search terms. This will tell you everything that got matched to your keywords. Okay. So now you can find out if there's stuff that you didn't pick up on in the keyword stemming analysis. So now you got an opportunity to add new keywords for those that perform well and more negatives. But in the case of the keywords, this is the kind of data that you'll get on this, all these different columns we talked about. Let's see. And then this will tell you over here the different match types, phrase match, some exact matches in there. And this is how it looks and how it will be loaded. So if you have the two quotes that you're telling Google that's a phrase match term, if you have the square brackets, that's saying it's an exact match. You get stats information, and these are informative, but not necessarily, they're meant to scare you, but you shouldn't be. So it says it's eligible but limited. Oh, well, you're below the first page bid of $2.49, where we got a maximum CPC on this, $1.01. Now you can raise it, but if you're not happy with the conversion performance of that keyword, you sure wouldn't want to do that. Let me see, there's a good example here. So, okay, so we've got this keyword. It wants us to spend more, but we've got a cost per conversion of $29. And if my maximum cost per conversion is just, let's say 17 bucks, except for like this one, about half of them would be in the criteria where that would be fine. I might want to raise my bid a little bit. Otherwise, I don't worry about it. If you don't show up on the first page, not a problem. As you can see, even if you're not on the first page, like this one's still generating lots of conversions for you. Maybe not that exact example, but down here's a good one. You get, 30 bucks or 3 conversions within your target. And on one like this, so you'd say, well, yeah, this could be an important one for me. We get lots of impressions, lots of clicks on it. We're just a little bit out of target over here. But we want to make sure we don't lose all these conversions. You might drop that bid down to like 76 cents. Or enough to where now you're seeing the cost per conversion down in that $17 range. So that's how you can use that to really tune up and get the most out of your keywords. Let's see, what I'm talking about here. Quality score. So this was introduced by Google, I don't know, a long time ago now, 10 years ago maybe. And the idea was, besides whatever you bid, Google would make a determination on a keyword by keyword basis as to what its quality was. It's subjective on Google's part, but what they're looking for is, does the keyword show up in the ad, and does the keyword show up on the landing page? And that's why that recommendation up front is whatever your most important keywords are for sure, make sure those get included in your ad. That have a benefit of, first of all, you tend to get more higher click-through rate that way. You'll get a higher quality score. And I'll talk about what the pluses and minuses of that are. So that's where that comes in. This, I'm not sure this is even on. It didn't used to be on by default for a while, so you need to go into the column mods if you don't see it, because that's important to keep in mind to figure out where we are now. With these particular keywords, they were all kind of in the 4s and 5s, right? So if you get a 10, that's like excellent. You've done absolutely everything right. You will see some of those. 8s and 9s are kind of weird. Sometimes you won't see any of those. You'll see a bunch of these and then 7s and down. So what the fine delineation is hard to tell. But if you got a 7 through 10, you're going to benefit. If Google likes your quality score, your ad will be artificially raised potentially. So maybe just based on your bid, you might be in the 3rd spot. Now you get bumped up to the 2nd spot. Okay. And whatever you pay per click, let's say your click fee, your drop down fee would be 76 cents. If you've got a 10, you might only pay 62 cents. So you pay less than what you actually bid because Google liked your quality score. So it's important to know what that is. 6s and 7s are good. 5s and 4s are like, okay, a little shaky. If you get down to the 1s and 2s, particularly the 1s, those are horrible. At that point in time, you pay more per click. You'd be artificially lower a good deal. And you may not even show as often. Even if you had budget to show, it may not show you as often as it would otherwise. And that's a summary of what the positives and negatives are. Any questions about bidding or quality scores? Okay. So talk more about ad groups now, the keyword breakouts. So now we're back to our commercial real estate firm, the international firm, but we're looking at the group that's responsible for the state of Kentucky. And you notice we've got in this one campaign, we've got 8 different ad groups, and they kind of break down into 2 different types. So this one is for any keywords that include the word commercial, whether that's agent. Well, this one, if it's commercial and then talks about agents or realtors or brokers, this is specifically about property, so it might be Kentucky real estate, realty, things like that. If people are looking for industrial properties, by the way, commercial is kind of a catch-all, but some people don't know that, so that's kind of a less specific. But you have people looking specific for industrial properties, office properties, or retail spaces. So by having these things broken down this way, now we can have keywords very, very specific to each of these groups, and we can have individual keyword maximum bid, essentially ad group level bids tuned based upon the actual performance. Then you get the rest of the data back there. So that really gives you a lot of control. So in this case, you got the keywords. Now you'll see in a second. It'll show up in the ads. Again, Google likes that. You get higher CTRs anyway. And then you can take them to the appropriate landing page. So yeah, this is an example of a super skinny end result ad, but it'll give you the idea what we're talking about. So this Kentucky commercial property ad group with 2 different ads that look like this without any of the extension or anything else. And you can see how that keyword is all kind of peppered throughout these guys. And where are we taking them for a commercial property? This is to the page that's got all the different listings, the property listing, directly to it. Not where our company's about, not the home page, right to the properties. And if this were for the agent groups, it would take you to a page to talk about the office agents or the retail agents, so they could determine who they want to talk to. And with this kind of approach, you get a much, much better end results. Okay, so performance analysis on ad groups, again, the way you get to that is back to the console, this particular tab, ad groups and campaigns they're in. For this case is just for June 1 through October 31st, looking at different conversion metrics. I guess not a lot to be said. Some of the ad groups, which you'll see, don't really do much at all. Not spending much, not getting much. Other ones, in fact, these would be, they would love these. So these guys sell the more expensive properties. So spending, anything less than about $50 for a conversion is that's like gold. But again, you can do all the bid adjustments, and just like you could at the keyword level. Okay, we've talked about the high-level campaigns, breaking it down into ad groups and breaking that down into keywords. Any questions about any of that so far? $10 for the best question.
Mhm.
So going back to the bid price again here. So you said we want to start for a low bid for a keyword and then see how the keywords end up ranking, how it performs. And when we see the highest ranking keywords, then we increase our bid amount on those higher ranking keywords. We kind of encourage that.
Yeah, I mean, so in other words, and by the way, I probably should point this out. You see where this has the default maximum CPC of 1 cent? That's because we're using individual keyword bidding, which supersedes this. So don't be confused by that. But yeah, that's exactly it. So for each of the keywords in this top level ad group, collectively, they had a cost per conversion of $19 and some change, 465. Well, what you'll probably find out is that there might be a handful of keywords that do a lot better than that. Maybe they generate, the top couple generate, 2/3 of the conversions, and they have an average cost per conversion of $16. Now, if you're willing to spend more than that, you might want to increase the bids on those. And if you got some which are running, maybe you're spending $35 for a conversion, on those you might want to decrease the bid on. So yes, that's exactly how you want to look at that.
One more question. So if you're the only bidder for a specific keyword, like say, you're say at $15 for that keyword, and there is no other lower bidder, what do you actually end up paying for a click on that one?
That'll never happen. I've never seen that happen. And I'll tell you why. If you've got a product term that's so unique that there's no other competitors in the space, nobody's searching on it.
Well, actually, I have to say that, our product is very specific. There are other dealers, but I haven't seen them doing any Google ads. So for the name of our product, yes, it is that unique that that could be the case.
Well, all I can tell you, if you bid too low, I mentioned that minimum amount, and Google won't tell you what that is. But if you were to start out with a bid of 1 cent, and you look, and first, like I say, I would love to do a search on that just to see if there's truly no other competition. But yeah, I'm trusting that's exactly the case what you're talking about. Yeah, then start low. I mean, bid 10 cents, and if you're getting impressions and clicks, great. If you find out you're not, what I would suggest doing is increasing your bid and see if that makes a difference. Because first of all, whatever they would do in a minimum drop-down situation like that, and I've never had that asked because I've never seen that situation. In fact, when you do your keyword stemming analysis, you'll almost, the only way I think you would see that is if you saw zero traffic, there were like no searchers on it. Because if people are searching on it in general, they're probably finding other competitors. But the worst that would happen is you'd keep increasing your bid, and whatever they decided that drop-down price would be, it would be the same whether you're 25 cents or 50 cents, right? The only problem with going too high is if somebody slips in underneath you now, suddenly whatever you were paying before can be jacked up.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. You got to tell me where to send your $10. Or I'll buy you a beer. How about that? Okay, let's see. So any other questions on this? All right. So let's talk about creating your ads. So this is an example ad. And by the way, this style of ad, which we talked about, where you had up to 15 headlines, 4 descriptions, that's called a responsive search ad. That is, within the past couple of months, has replaced what was called the expanded text ads. And the ad length and how you build them has really changed over time. Google has decided, again, in its infinite wisdom, it does not want you coming up with ads where you give it just this. With the old ETA style ads, expanded text ads, you would do it. I want this here, this here, this here, this. There'd be no changes, okay? Now, Google may not always show the third headline. It may not always show the second description, but it's always going to be the same. So they got rid of that, and they want you to build this whole stuff so they have total control of what your ad's showing. And I don't trust them, and I haven't seen the best results with that. So I'll tell you a little trick. You remember I said you got to have a minimum of 3, minimum of 2, but you don't have to have more. So you build an ad where you just have the 3 things you want on the headline, just have the 2 things you want for the description line, and pin those, like headline 1, or the first headline, pin to position 1, pin to position 2, pin to position 3, pin to description 1, pin to description 2. Now, that way you can put what you believe your best foot forward. And I have found that a lot of times your best foot forward, we start to get results faster than letting Google cycle through all kinds of combinations that may not make as much sense. Having said that, what I suggest is a strategy, if you don't mind doing it. So come up with a big fully blown one, okay? So that the responsive search ad that we saw, we give the 15 headlines, etc. One like that, and then you create another one, would be another responsive ad where you just have them fixed. Just 3, just 2, all in fixed positions. And let those 2 run against each other. And now you can see which ad truly gets the better conversion rates and which ad gets the better click-through rates. So it's kind of working in the system, although Google would never recommend it. They wouldn't tell you the fact, they wouldn't highlight the fact that you can do that, and it's all legit. Okay, so we talked about that, the final URL, which you don't see here, we give it that. We talked about that. We talked about that with the fully blown RSA ad. This will all change on a search by search basis. Okay. We talked about all that. Yeah. Okay. So this is just the reminder of what the old stuff looked like, and again, you can appreciate the fact in the old style, you got it just by doing this. With the other one, with the RSAs, you can, if you will, cheat the system. Now, creating winning PPC ads. And this is a term Google uses, but I like this. They want your ads to be highly relevant to the keywords in the landing pages. And you break that out. What they really want to see is keywords in the ads, keywords on the landing pages. Then they give you good quality scores. And you get better click-through rates, better conversion rates. Talk about that. So there's some other things here, and for English majors out there, they may have an issue with this, but it's a best practice to capitalize the first letter of important words in your ad. So like in this case, in the example, the C is capitalized, the L, and then the I, and then the W. The O for of is not capitalized. And you can do your own tests, like you could have an ad with caps and one without, with more of a sentence structure. But in testing I've done in the I guess, long past at this point in time, in those kind of tests, it really does work better. Capitalizing your first word, your important words, forces the I, and you get better CTR results. Besides talking about your product or service, you can test selling incentives. Talking about offering free samples or free shipping and handling. White papers, those are just content documents that might be of interest, like how to pick out the best blue suede shoes. You have a little paper talk, a little short thing, talk about what the things you want to look for, quality of the leather, the sole, etc. Things like that. And then, in fact, I've seen some people, you can actually do an ad. So let's say instead of even talking about your blue suede shoes, you had an ad that talked about the importance of having a pair of blue suede shoes, where the whole ad was taken up why you'd want this document. This can make you a much, much better Elvis impersonator, or whatever it is that you want to say about that. So you can actually take that, and sometimes driving people with content, getting them there, you can then improve your conversion rates. And the key is have at least 2 ads in test, but beware of having too many. One of the accounts that I picked up a while back, they had 15 different simultaneous ads running in an ad group that didn't generate that many impressions to begin with. It would have taken them 3 decades to be able to get enough conversion data spread over those 15 ads to be able to figure out which ones were the best conversion wise. Okay. And so what you do, you run along after you've got enough conversion data, make a call. Okay, I've got, say, even if it's just 2 ads running, this one's doing poorly, I'll pause it, I'll create a new ad, try to leverage the best characteristics of the winner with some changes perhaps. and then, run that for a while. So it's always a matter of, winner, new contender, new winner, new contender, and so you're improving yourself all the time. Couple of no-nos. Google does not like all caps, like the word sale, S-A-L-E. No, doesn't like that. Not going to let you get away with it. And there are some exceptions. So if your product is an acronym, I'll give you an example. So I had a client that was, they sold, like the OSHA posters and stuff for offices and manufacturing places. And there was a new service that came out called GINA. It was a government induced. I don't know what initials are for. So we want to announce the fact now includes GINA, G-I-N-A, and we did get denied. But there's a built-in request for review. So instead of being zapped by an algorithm, it now goes to a human who looks at that. And I've never had a situation, I've gotten a few of these over time, but I've never had a situation where when you then asked, and it gives you a chance to explain what it is that they didn't come back and prove. Excessive symbols, you can have a single exclamation point within your description. You can't use the description line in the header. You can use question marks in the header or the description. And sometimes asking a question is like, looking for super soft blue suede shoes. That might be really effective, something like that. And then you can use $ signs but you can't use multiple $ signs. And then the other repeated keyword, even if you had sales spelled S-A-L-E, big S, rest of it small. If you did that, sale, Google won't let you do that either. I mean, it's kind of common sense, but some of these kind of things worked in the past, for me included, before they changed those particular ad rules way back when. Okay. Now, we talked about ad schedules, and the default is 24/7, but if you go to the ad schedule section, click on that, it'll give you, and this screen I think was changed a little bit, but it'll give you a chance to define when you want your ads to run, if you don't want them to be 24/7. So edit the schedule. So now we're looking at the ads metrics, and again, that's selected from that main console. The left-hand side it says ads, and I've done a couple things here. I've redacted out the some of the information and the final URL, so you can't see who the client is. So we've got this is back. Actually, I should comment about something. Any of you who have existing AdWords campaigns, Google did not stop expanded ads from running. You can't edit them, you can't create any new ones, but if you've got ones that are performing well, you can keep them in there and just test some of the RSA ads against them. But this was back in the day when they were both, and so you had these two different ads running, and you can see there were differences in some of the conversion characteristics, but not much. $2 delta between the top and the bottom one. And you can see that's based upon, the cost per conversion is close, even though there's some fairly significant differences in the conversion rates. Now, in this case, this is good news because it had a better conversion rate than the ETA ad, which is eventually going to be superseded. And all the data we talked about there, and you can make decisions about which one to keep, which one to pause. That's something else, by the way. You can do two things. If you've got an ad, one of these ones that you want to shut down, you can delete it, in which case it's kind of gone forever, and you can lose some of the metrics. Or you can just pause it. It won't run, but it'll stay in there, and you can see how it performed against some of your newer ads. So I suggest, whether it's pausing a keyword or an ad or whatever, use the pause, not the remove or delete. Any questions about ad writing? Okay, landing pages. So where do you take your visitors? This is kind of a classic, and I can understand why. I'll just take the visitors to my homepage, right? That's where other people end up if they do a regular SEO type search. And that's not a good idea for several reasons. First of all, the homepage may not be optimized for particular keywords, which impact your quality scores for one thing. Second, if a homepage isn't designed to where the visitor can take the action you want to take right from there, now you're forcing them to hunt around for the information or hunt around to make that purchase. So it's a bad move for that reasons. They're not optimized to get the action, and you only get a fraction. And then we talk about the penalization for quality score. Now, how about taking people to the product page? Well, in the case of the blue suede shoes, instead of taking them to the Acme Shoes homepage, take them to a shoes page would be better, probably than the homepage. But it's not going to be to the blue suede shoes page itself, so you're going to force them to hunt around to be able to make a buy. So what you really want to do, now you may actually have is, so if you're selling products, you probably have a blue suede shoes product page, right? So that might be a good thing to select for your landing page, because now it is where they want to go, and hopefully they can purchase the product right from there. So as I mentioned, you want to have keywords from the, in fact, the blue suede shoes example. I don't know how you could avoid not having this in there. Action getting messaging, buy now. In the case of a lead form, don't tell the people to go over to your contact us page. Have a little form right there on the page. So you describe your service, and now here it is, name, phone number, email address, whatever you're asking for, right there, so they can click the submit button and take action. You want to have messaging type. Having long run-on sentences and paragraphs makes it hard to read. People don't. Much better off, better use of space by coming up with texts. Here's the benefits from our product versus ABC Widget Corp. Bing, 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 bing. Easy to see, stands out, and it also tends to help with your quality score, because instead of having, you tend to end up with a higher keyword density that way, because your bullets will be more focused than a bunch of the run-on stuff. Talk about make the purchase right from the page, filling out a form, making a phone call. A lot of people, it always surprises me, a lot of people don't have their phone number show up in their website template. To me, it ought to be on every single page, ideally on the top and on the bottom. So wherever they are looking, whatever page, if they want to call you, they're ready to take that action. You make it easy for them. Credibility builders, customer quotes, if you got any kind of rewards, reviewer praise, articles, any of that kind of stuff, little snippets of that. Freddie, VP of sales, this company, if they let you say that, he's got a one-line sentence about how the product saved his bacon in the third quarter, or whatever. That kind of stuff can really be beneficial, particularly if your competitors aren't doing that. This is something that's becoming more and more important over time. Wherever you're asking people to fill out a form, you want to make sure you have a privacy policy, where you're telling people you're not going to rent, sell, or do, spam them with the data they give you. Yes.
My understanding is that search results vary by user based upon their search use history, meaning Google generates search results based upon the profile they have generated for the user. As such, does that mean that our ad will turn up more for some users and less for others? And if so, how do we navigate that better for targeting?
That's a great question. I guess the best way to look at that is Google does profile you in its search. Like, I've been profiled incorrectly politically by Google earlier on. I was saying, why am I getting all this I want to see everything. And you can actually, certain things about yourself, you can actually change. I don't remember what the function is because I haven't looked at it in a while. But certain things that Google thinks it knows about you, it will try and steer you in a better direction. Now, that doesn't come into play so much on the search side as it does when you're cruising the display network. So that basketball ad, if you had a history of doing basketball searches, you might see a basketball ad on a search that had nothing to do with basketball or sports at all. Like, I've had people say, I don't know why I keep getting these car ads. I'm over here on this kind of a site and I've seen a car ad. Well, that was because 2 months ago they were searching for cars to make a purchase. Google remembers that. So then they will start skewing ads much bigger time on the display network. On the search side, you won't see that so much. And there's no way you would know that, and there's nothing you can really do about it. It's all driven by the searches that you get, the keywords that you use. And I'll give you an example where this can be kind of tough. So I was working with one of the big antivirus companies a while back. And as you know, you get companies purchasing big time server-based antivirus products, and that's what they sold. And then you have companies which sell, both that and the individual, PC-based or mobile-based antivirus product. The problem is, because it's all driven by the search, there was no way to weed out the wheat from the chaff, because just an individual purchaser. Now they had terms like server-based, and there were definitely commercial-based keywords in there. But the problem is the highest volume came in from words which weren't necessarily like that. So that becomes a real problem. It ends up being a choice. Would you rather have more come in, but maybe less targeted? Or would you rather be really targeted, but have lower search volume? So that's about the only way you can really handle that. Now, having said that, there are a couple of different demographic adjustments you can make. Like Google has an income-based thing. So for various income levels, you can either preclude certain levels or you can do bid adjustments. So if your audience is primarily elderly people, you might pick the 50 to 65, 65 and above, and then you might have 0 for everything beneath that. Or maybe you have a spread, like I've got a coffee customer, and they have, coffee is purchased by people of all ages, but certain age groups tend to convert better. So instead of just getting rid of an age group entirely, we would have, for the best age groups, we might have a bid that's 50% higher than the age groups which don't purchase as well. By the way, I'm going to have to forgive myself and take a little see here. Did that get your question? Was that covered? Or did I just ramble on and waste your time?
No, that was great. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, so by using the privacy policy link, if you don't have that, they're easy to get. Just go to Google and do a search on privacy policy examples, and then you can paraphrase, come up with your own. You put a little link somewhere on you, ideally beneath the form fill, and it takes me to this page that says we're not going to sell your data and whatever. So that's pretty easy to accommodate. And by the way, not having a privacy policy page can have a nice big negative impact on your quality scores. Okay, so I used to try and cover different types of landing pages, but they're so varied, and what works for one company may not work at all for another. So what I'm suggesting you do is you do a search for the Google Ads best practice landing pages, and there's a whole bunch of them, and the best ones always end up surfacing to the top. And wow, it's like it'll give you all kinds of ideas and stuff as to what you want to use. Another way you can make sure that you're going to stay on top of the competition is do a search for some of your main keywords. See what your competitors are doing. Hopefully you'll find out they're all idiots and taking people to a home page that's not going to convert. But you'll find others who do a really good job. Oh man, we should add that feature. Oh wow, we should say that. 100% money back guarantee, or it'll give you ideas on what you want to add and include on your page. That's 2 ways to do that. Any questions about the LPs? I'm get on time here. Okay, let's talk about the reporting function. That was accessed via that little graphy looking thing up on the top right hand of the main console. And this is an example of a report I put together for one client. Actually, I do the same report for every client. And it's a monthly report. And that's where I have said, okay, these are the columns every month. This is the data I want to look at. You specify just as you would on the console, what columns I want, what sequence they're in. I tell it what date range I'm looking at, and then it spits it out, and it'll save the report. So each month I'll go back and I'll update the report and find out what the latest is. Something else I should highlight, and this is something the first time you see it, you might scratch your head and think you're seeing something. Google has a concept called conversion delay. So Google will track conversions up to 30 days after the person first clicked on your ad and came on, 90 days. So looking at, let's see, if I'm doing this report the 1st of November, and it's telling me I've got 177 conversions for October, if I go back in December, that number might jump up to 201 conversions. Another month further out, that might jump up to 203, and then another month out, the last month, it might jump up to 206. And it tends to work out, the further out you get, the fewer delayed conversions. But these numbers will change. And, depending on the kind of product and service and clients you have. Like one of my clients, during a 30-month rollout period, I mean, so 90-day rollout period, we have conversion delay that runs probably close to 25% of the total conversions. So comparing October back to July, for example, or October of last year, it's not going to be apples to apples because this guy isn't going to be complete yet, probably. Okay. So that's how you can see it. Again, unlike the 14, 15 line segment breakouts, this you could have years worth of data. Oh, by the way, I should also point out, you can also see, I don't have it set up here like this, but you can also select to have this data shown in a graphical format. Okay, so you can have some of the variables and show that in stacked bars or stacked bars or things like that. Okay, so creating a new or modified report, since if you haven't already done this, you'll need to, or want to, I should say. So in this case, you'll hit the report button for the first time. By the way, there are some canned reports in there. So Google gives you a couple things that's already put together that things might be useful. But when you're ready to create something just for you, like in this case, creating a monthly report. So in this case, I've selected a table format. My rows on the right or left are going to be month. And then I'm picking my columns over here. And then I can move them into whatever sequence I want by just grabbing on the little hash there and moving it up or down, whatever sequence you want. And then you select from all these over here. And these all have drop downs. So what you can do if you're looking for something and you can't remember, what was that impression thing? I want to see that, the impressions top and absolute top. You could just type in IMP or IMPR, either one. It'll break out a list of all the different types of data that you might want to look at. And then you can select the ones you want and pop them over here. So it's really pretty easy. And then each month you can just update the date range and you're ready. In fact, as a management and reporting tool, that's one of the easiest things that you can do because it's already there. You don't have to recut the console report. Any questions about reporting?
For Google Ads, is it better to use the feature within the Google Ads reporting versus Google Analytics, for example?
It's different data. For instance, just on the conversion side, Google Ads looks at conversions differently. Google Analytics tracks a conversion when it happens. So if they first visited 3 months ago, but they didn't convert till today, that's when analytics is going to count it, whereas Google will send it back to the original date or break it up if you selected linear or one of the other attribution models. So it looks at stuff differently. To me, because I'm focusing in on the AdWords side of things, that's what I care about. So that's how I look at it. Adding analytics views, and there's some things you can do in analytics that you can't do in AdWords, like latency. Like you may want to get, page latency. You might want to get bounce reports. You might want to get a whole bunch of things that Google has no insight into. So they're both useful, but for just managing AdWords or Google Ads, this is what I would suggest if you have to do one or the other. Sound good?
Thank you.
You're welcome. So this is the key resource. This is Google's official way of announcing changes, whether it's going to help you or not. This is what you want to sign up for. So if you go to that page, you can sign up to have Google send you those updates. So if they're going to change how they look at quality scores, or they're phasing out some particular feature you like in 3 months, that's how you'll find out about it, because it'll be delivered to your inbox. It's also, if you're going to this place for the first time, there's all kinds of good articles in there that can help you out in getting stuff set up and getting stuff tuned. So very, very helpful. And by the way, that's anytime you see the key, that's like that's like an important thing in the slides. So let's talk about now the keys to the PPC search engine success. And one of the first things you want to do is upfront figure out how much you can afford to pay for conversion. You can't tune to your best conversion performance if you don't know what you're willing to spend. So are you willing to spend $5 to make a sale or $25 to make a sale? You're willing to spend $10 to get a lead? And it might be different depending on whether you're doing a contact us form or somebody who just wants to download a piece of content. But you need to decide what that is up front so you can do your setup and tuning accordingly. Got to do your basket of qualified keywords. You don't want to skimp on that. Create the meaningful campaigns that break out. Same thing for the ad groups based upon the criteria we talked about. Create the ads using the best practices. And then, utilizing or specifying true landing pages. In the case of something you're selling online, you probably have a product page which would work just fine. If you're trying to generate a lead for some particular service that you don't really call out, maybe it's like, we have these following services here, and you got 8 different things, and that's it. You might want to create, if you're going to advertise on a particular service, you might want to then create a landing page. It's all about that service. Now, one thing I will highlight, because people get real nervous about this, like, oh my gosh, I have a bunch of different ad groups. I don't have, LPs that are built in ready for them. Do I have to, modify my whole website, change the navigation? The answer is no. There's a concept called orphan pages, where it's the page sits on your website, but it's not linked to from your main site navigation. Now, the page itself can and should have navigation taking to other parts of the website, but it makes it really easy. So let's say we sell blue suede shoes, red suede shoes, and green suede shoes. So I create my blue suede shoes LP template, and now I can copy that, put it in a different address, and then change green to blue and come up with a different picture. Same thing then for the red. So if you need to do that for, create those kind of pages because you don't have anything that really talks about it, where you're taking the person in detail, that's an easy way to make that kind of a change. And then the key after that is really testing, tracking, and tuning. I would suggest at first you want to monitor your stuff on a daily or every other day basis. Once you get a handle on your spend rate and all that, then you can drop back and you don't have to manage it as often. Maybe you can just review it once a week and maybe once a month, a more serious review. But you don't want to go like 4, 5, 6 months without looking at anything and being set up as a, hopefully not a $20,000 surprise, but even a couple $100 that you don't want to spend is probably more than enough. So pitfalls, you forget your keys. You don't do one of the things on the previous page. Okay, so then this is kind of a step back for a second, and it's a lead generation matrix. And I'm comparing 4 different types of online marketing. And this is based upon one customer and one set of tests. And it's not, again, not one size fits all. But what we wanted to test was, and we had estimates on the front end, these are the back end results, $4,000 to spend for each of these particular programs running over the course of, I guess, a month or 2. And then, okay, so if I had $4,000 to spend on a banner paper program, remember I mentioned that you could do image ads and stuff like that, those were banners. And it cost me 25 cents to be able to get a click from that. That means I'm going to be able to get 16,000 visitors from that 4K spend. Opted email third-party list might be a little bit cheaper. These are people who said, okay, I'm with this organization, and I'm willing to take unsolicited promotional emails. These today, finding good, honest, and true ones may be a little bit harder to come by, but they used to be a really good source of leads. User sponsorship advertisers. So this is Okay, so you get an email from SCORE. Now, I don't know if they have any ads in there, but they might. And you probably belong to some newsletters where you'll be reading along, here's what the club is doing, and you'll see an ad for this or some other third-party ad. So that's what this is all about, e-newsletter sponsorship advertising. It's a little bit different in terms of how they price. Basically, you're spending, you're bidding on X number of dollars per 1,000 clicks. So, yeah, per 1,000 clicks. And then in this particular case, the key was you could buy 80,000 people who received the sponsored newsletter. And then here's the PPC program, what we've been talking about. So kind of obvious here, you're spending $4,000, you've got an average CPC of 50 cents, and so you're going to get 8,000 visitors. Now you start to get into look at click-through ratios. And on the PPC stuff, it's 100% because you're only paying so many clicks. In the case of third-party emails, maybe you only get a 5% CTR, and typically with the sponsorship ads and e-newsletters, it's a lot smaller. So now you can calculate the number of people who actually make it to your site. Now you can calculate your cost per visitor. Okay. And then in this case, this is a company that's looking for leads, either people who fill out a form or make a phone call. And for the different types of medium, I found they'll have different types of conversion rates for these kind of actions, depending on the programs they came from. Now you can calculate the actual cost per, in this case, of a form fill. And when you get down to this level, we were actually, and this isn't anything part of Google, but we found we had different close ratios salespeople had, depending on where they initially came from, even though they ended up calling or filling out the form. They have slightly different, ratios here. And it just so happened that with the PPC stuff, and probably because the people actually, searched on that particular term across your account, they had higher conversion rates. So then you calculate the number of sales, and then you get down to, you get down to this right here. In this particular example, we had a cost per customer ranging from $42 to $1,250. Now here's the trick question, or trick or tweet. What would you do? What's best? Which one would you go with?
The pay per click.
Well, that's meant to be a tricky part of it. That's a good cost per conversion, and you definitely might want to do it. But in the case of that company that sold the local area networking hardware, or actually the real estate outfit, they would do all these things because they can afford to do it. So it's really a matter of what you can afford. Now, in this example, if you'd done all your tests and got it as tuned up as you could, and that was your best price, but you couldn't afford to spend more than $20 to get that, new client, then you'd probably say none of these are going to work for you unless you can tune them up or do something else. So it's one of those things that really kind of depends. But using this approach, first of all, to be able to think through what you want to test. And on the front end, you're not going to know how to guesstimate some of these numbers. After you've been through it once, and then you actually have real numbers, it makes it easier to do moving forward. This particular spreadsheet, I think you've already got access. I'm sure everybody had access to the download of the presentation. But if you'll shoot me an email and just request the spreadsheet, or I can even send you another copy of the presentation. But if you email me, I'll send this to you in a spreadsheet format, and then you can use it to create your own or fill in your own data or use it for whatever you want. And by the way, this thing can be used for other things too, like as long as you can track the end result, like telemarketing, telesales, where you can actually tell when you made a sale on the back end, you can track that. It doesn't work particularly well for PR, but some other mediums, it may be useful outside of just straight electronic marketing. We're doing really good on time. Okay, so that's just if you'll email me here to get the spreadsheet.